Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. Hello. Today we have a big topic to cover. Topic of how to deal with challenging situations or challenging participants. It's one of the topics that inevitably emerges in every Train the Trainer course I deliver and in every advanced facilitation bootcamp I deliver. There is always a lot of interest in this topic. So if you feel like this topic is a little bit challenging and you're a little bit afraid of some unpredictable situations that might happen in workshops, don't worry, you're not alone. It's a thing for many trainers. Hence, today's episode. In today's episode, I look into this dealing with challenges in workshops in different ways and from different perspectives. First, I will share with you maybe the best tip I can offer in terms of dealing with difficult situations, and that will be to see how can you prevent them. And I'll share more specifically what are my best tips to prevent any difficult, unexpected, challenging situations in training. Then number two, I will share one tip, which is, again, the best tip I can offer. What is one thing you can and should do every time right at the beginning of the challenging situation, in every situation? And then number three, I'll dive into some general tips for difficult situations or for challenging situations in workshops based on my own experience, what works for me and what helps in general in most of these situations. And finally, in the end, I will explore 4 different specific situations that can happen in a workshop with specific couple of tips. What can you do if that situation happens? So a lot to cover, and there is so much more within this topic we could cover. So I'll go in a little bit faster pace. You know that you can always pause me and rewind and check in and make some notes. But you can also download the handout in which you will have most of the things I mentioned, briefly mentioned, to remind you what were the main things and topics shared. Are you ready to dive in? Okay, so the first question, what is the best, most important thing you can do to avoid challenging situation in a training? And my answer is, the best thing you can do is to pay a lot of attention how you build the opening of your training. So in opening, that is where you build the space and the group. And of course, you cannot mitigate any kind of challenge, but for many challenges, if you build that space and group well, if you do a strong opening and that opening sets the tone for the workshop well in a smart way, it is very likely that most of challenging situations will not even happen. So I want to remind you that it's really important that in your opening, you're intentional about 3 things and how you're building them. First one, trust and safety. Can you create a space in which participants can relax and really engage with the topic, in which they feel safe and relaxed? And here, one of the best tips is don't say this is a safe place, but instead make sure you build that safety inherently in the way that interactions are made and that you build it up gradually. I'm sharing much more about that in another podcast episode, in number 16, which is all about workshop opening. So check it out. I will also link it in the description. And also in one of the blog posts on Trainer's Toolbox, where I talk a lot about how to use opening to prevent challenging situations. So I will link both of these in the description. The second thing you want to make sure to build within the opening is the connection between people. So sense of interest and belonging with the group and within the group, and just kind of people caring about each other a little bit and about the environment. This can go to bigger depth or stay a bit more on a lower level of depth. It really depends on your workshop goals and topics and context, but it is something that to some point it needs to exist if you want to prevent challenges. And number 3, you definitely want to build more relevance. So workshop really feels useful and they feel this will not be a waste of their time. This will actually be important for their life and for their work. And that way you're really building a space for them to be engaged and space for them to really be immersed in that workshop and to really care about it in a way and not wanting to disrupt it and not being bored and needing to, be challenging participants because they're bored. So if you build these three, trust, connection, and relevance, in the opening, the chances are very big you will not have disruptive behaviors, or even if you do, it will be much easier to mitigate them. So start there, start with the opening. Now, thing number 2 to keep in mind is the first most important thing you want to think about if any kind of challenging situation happens. Let's say you have a participant that has some negative communication. Let's say you have technical issues. Let's say you have any logistics issues. Whatever happens, energy drops in a room, whatever happens, the first, absolutely most important thing that you need to do, don't get distracted by the challenge. The first thing you really, really need to do is your own self-management. You cannot act in a smart, intentional, impactful way towards your participants. You cannot engage in this challenging situation with the best of your resources if you get too flustered and anxious about the situation, or in some way get into survival mode and reactive mode. Also with participants, if the situation is something that's a bit more or confrontational, it's very easy to get into defensive mode or into a bossy mode. So that is something you really want to avoid. To avoid it, there are 2 things you can do, 2 tools that can help you. First one is to work in life in general with any ways and ideas to help you stay more grounded. And that can be different grounding exercises, but in a situation when something already happens, your best anchor and your best way to stay grounded is to fall back to your breath. So before reacting in any way, before resolving, the situation, before tackling the issue or entering a discussion with the participant, take that nice, deep, slow breath. It will make all the difference. And then the second thing you can do is to really refocus on the goal of the workshop and ask, what is the role of this challenge in the goal of our workshop? And then deal with the challenge depending on that. For example, if a challenge is more external, it's not coming from participants, but from something else, or even if it's the energy in the room or something like that, really depending on your topic, that might be something that might be useful as a mini case study for participants to show how you're dealing with that challenge. So it might actually be some learning there for them. In other occasions, it might happen that the disruptive behavior that is happening has nothing to do with disrupting the workshop goal, but it's just disruptive because it makes you feel uncomfortable to some level. I'll give you an example. If you have a very silent participant, in reality, that might be their processing style. Maybe they prefer to engage their way. Maybe they need some more time to reflect. But for you, it might feel uncomfortable that they're silent for a long time. Or the opposite, if somebody is doodling or maybe even chatting with someone else, maybe that's something that's not disrupting others. Maybe it's actually helping them process in some way. Or typical example, if people don't show up on camera, this will depend on the goal of your workshop. Is it important that they show up on the camera or not? Sometimes it's really important for the group and their interaction because it's more personal space, there is more sharing, people getting to know each other. And then you do want to tackle this challenging situation and make people show up on the camera in some way because it's related to your workshop goal. But at other moments, people are maybe off camera because it's a part when you're explaining something or maybe when you're sharing instructions for something. And in reality, their cameras are not important at all and they have no benefits of being on camera, but it's only more comfortable for you as a trainer to have them on camera. In these situations, we want to really separate. Are we doing this for ourselves or are we doing this for the group and for the goal? And if it is just for ourselves because we are uncomfortable with their behavior, let's work on self-management instead of managing the group and the difficult situation. And if in reality it's something that influences the goal, then let's see what is the best way to mitigate that challenge or that behavior, but from a position of staying grounded and staying, not in survivor mode, but kind of smart, grounded, and focused. Now, I hope that makes sense. I'll go into another 5 tips on, in general, how can we approach these challenging situations in training. But I would say this one on self-management is one of the most important one, because the moment you manage your energy and the way you approach situation well, you have so much more capacity emotionally, cognitively, to deal with the situation that probably your reaction will naturally be so much better than if you rush into a reactive mode. Now, 5 fairly quick tips. From my experience, what are some of the good practices that you can do when you encounter some sort of challenging situation or behavior? First of them is to, shift your mindset a little bit. And what I mean here, one mindset that is common in a situation, something emerges in the room. Let's say you have a participant who's really challenging, they keep talking a lot, they're dominating the conversation or something like that. It is very easy to fall into the default mode and label that person as, this is a difficult participant, this is a dominant participant or something like that. Now, instead of that, what we can do is to really seek to shift our mindset to see their behavior as expression of unmet need that they have in this moment and in this context, and not like a personality trait. So they're not a difficult person, they're not a dominant whatever participant or person. They have a certain need in this situation, emotional, mental, learning need, and that need is not being met. So I really want to try to put myself in the shoes of understanding that and shifting my mindset in that direction. Also because this will prevent me from being hostile or defensive in this situation, and instead it will help me to reach the tip number 2, which is to really lean into the empathy. So what I want to do in that situation is not just think, hey, how do I fix this situation? But really ask, what does this participant need? What might be positive intention behind their behavior? Even if you think there's some negative intentions as well, I think you can always find a positive one as well, a need that they have that is not being met. And you can always ask, how can I actually support them in this so they would stop disrupting the process in the group because their need is more supported. And there can be many different needs for attention, need for significance in that moment, need for acknowledgement, need for relevance, if that is not clear enough in the workshop. So when we lean into that need and help them resolve that need, and also communicate, well, maybe not directly always, but communicate to some level that we are motivated to support them with their need, and also giving them more ownership to take care of their own need, this will be really helpful to actually help to mitigate that behavior. So these 2 are really about how you interact with that person who might be at that moment in disruptive behavior or in some way creating trouble for you and for your learning process. But what is equally important is not just to lean towards them, but to really lean towards the group as well. Our focus in learning will always be on the learning goal and on the group and what is their learning. And when individual shows up in a disruptive way, we definitely want to lean into their needs and empathize with them and seeing how we can support them. But at the same time, we want to very much protect the group's goal, the learning goal. And by protect, I don't mean push this person away, so we would protect the group goal. I mean speak to the need of this person, see how to support them, but also redirect the distraction back to the goal. What are we actually trying to achieve here? How can we go back to our learning goal and the relevance of that goal? And how can we shape their behavior, not to block it or push it away, but to in some way reintegrate it with the group goal? One of the ways we can work with that is through thinking with yes and in mind. I don't know if you know this technique from improv, or principle of improv, which is to accept every situation with yes and mindset, which basically mean not to say no or not to say yes but, which are very resisting ways of communication and mindset, but to always go along and accept what your partner in improv does, and then still build on top of that, add on top of that. So in a challenging situation in a training, there might be moments where we also need to set a firmer boundary, but very often this mindset can be very beneficial for us to actually take what they offer, whatever that is, speaking too much, dominating the discussion in my previous example, can we take that, acknowledge it, say yes, and then still move on more towards the goal and build on top of it? And it's really helpful if we learn to do more of that in our communication, but it is equally helpful, if not more, if we also do that in our mindset. If we don't defy and resist what they bring into the conversation or into the interaction, but if instead we really think with this in mind, hey, they have a different perspective of this right now, they're bringing in something different, how can we take it and still combine it with our approach and our principles and work with what emerges instead of trying to push it away if it doesn't suit our plan for the workshop. So really working into that yes and. And then the fifth thing that we can do to work out challenging situation better is to do a bit of that preparation in advance. And by preparation, I don't mean necessarily any sort of big behaviors that you need to do, but more mental preparation, just reflecting a bit what might be some challenges for me today. For example, if my agenda is very packed, time management might be a challenge. What might be challenges that show up? That people talk too long, too abundantly. How can I keep that in a bit more timely manner? Or the opposite, if I have very open, very facilitative workshop with a lot of space, my challenge might be that people don't really speak up a lot and that it's hard to build interaction. How can I prepare for that situation more? Why we want to prepare in advance is because when we are in a situation, we have a lot of things going on. We need to keep a focus on a agenda and the goal and goal more than the agenda, but also the time management and the participants and what is happening in the room and their energy and our energy. And in a situation, there are also different emotions we have, and maybe we're all a little bit tired. And our abilities to think of creative, innovative solutions to deal with these challenges are not on their top. Our brain is already quite stretched in many directions. Because of that, if we can reflect on these situations a little bit in advance, this will enable us to really prepare some really good ideas that we can easily pull out in the situation when something happens. So we do want to do things like listening to podcasts like this, especially talking to other trainers, something we do a lot in Trainers Toolbox in courses, but also in trainers conversations in our community. Just talking with other trainers, what are their best practices, what are some ideas, harvesting these ideas, reflecting on these situations, and in some way preparing for them in advance. By the way, with Trainers Conversations, the community, it's a great place to keep learning from other trainers and with other trainers. So if that's something you feel you've been missing a little bit in your training life, I will link it in the description of this podcast episode as well. Check it out. It's a year-long membership in a community. So always you can join in November. So you can sign up if you're listening to this one in November, or you can also, sign up for waiting list for the next year in case it's not the right time to join right now. Now, from these 5 tips, I know I shared quite a lot and I shared them quite quickly, so I just want to give you a moment to think from these 5 things as I summarize them briefly. Which 5 would you like to be using a little bit more? And then we'll still go through some specific situations. So from 5 tips, first one, shifting your mindset more towards they're not difficult, they just have needs that are not being met. Tip number 2, leaning more towards into empathy, trying to understand what these participants need, what is troubling them right now, and so on. Number 3, refocusing on the group and on the goal and seeing how can we not necessarily mitigate this behavior directly, but how can we in a meaningful way connect it to serve the group goal and the group? Is there a way to use it in a creative way to actually support the goal? Then number 4 was to approach more of yes and mindset, both internally, that we really think like this, but also in our communication. And 4th one was to reflect on these situations a bit more in advance, maybe journal a bit on them, always think what is a situation that might emerge on a specific workshop we are designing, and then also discussing it with fellow trainers, so in some way preparing in advance. I do want to invite you to take a moment to think. You can always pause this, podcast, to take a moment to think out of these 5, which is one that is really, one that you want to put in practice a little bit more. And of course, you can always download the handout and discover more things there and all these same ideas and take them as a material for reflection. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is for 4 different types of situations, from overly engaged to disengaged participants to technical problems. What are some of the tips we can use and leverage in these specific situations? I'll be honest, I don't like to discuss specific situations a lot and what to do with them for one simple reason. I feel it's too easy then for people to take these tips as prescriptive. This is what I need to do. This is step by step what I should do in this situation. And I prefer to think in much more goal-oriented way. What is happening in this situation and what is our goal for the workshop and where are we right now in the workshop and how can we use this challenge in some way, or how can we deal with it in some way that still serves that goal and that we can be flexible and adaptable. So I do want to invite you, don't take the tips that I share as prescriptive. These are 5 things I should do in this situation, but take them as ideas that you will have at your hand in a situation that you encounter. And instead of falling straight into those tips, in a difficult situation, always take a moment for self-management, nice deep breath in and out, and quick intention, how do I want to deal with that situation? And only then step into dealing with it. And when dealing with it, seek to be goal-oriented and not just follow the quick tips. And then in that way, grounded and goal-oriented, can you pick some of the ideas that I offer or that you come up with yourself and really use them in an intentional way. I hope that makes sense. Intentionality in training is a big thing for me, and I am actually going to cover it also in episode number 20, so 2 episodes after this one. So if you're curious about that one, make sure to subscribe or to check for that episode if it's already out. Now, situation number 1, one that occurs commonly, is technical problems. Especially in the online world of training, we can encounter problems, with connection, with Zoom, with participants connection, with many things, not to even name all of them. But we can also encounter technical problems in a real setup, real life, face-to-face setup. For example, if we have problems setting up projector, we have problem with lights in the room, it's too cold, it's too warm, whatever, and maybe it's not a room we use often, so we're not sure how to manage it. So we can encounter many things that show up as sort of a technical problems. And here are 4 quick tips I would advise to do when we encounter technical problem. Number 1, most important thing as always, to stay calm, to not get in panicky mode. Quickly, I have to resolve this quickly. We're starting the workshop, we are late, we are wasting time. Not to get hectic about it, but to really take nice breath in and out and deal with the situation by projecting also safety to the group, by projecting the sense of, hey, I know what I'm doing here. Don't worry, I will take care of this. In that, it's a good idea to also be transparent with participants if we are experiencing a certain issue. So to actually name it, say what's going on, and say what are we doing about it and what do we need from them. Can they help us? Should they just be a little bit patient, give us a bit of time? Because there is nothing worse than a trainer starting off their workshop, let's say in virtual space, and trying to multitask. We have background noise from some participant and they're trying to mute them, and at the same time they're trying to do the opening and talk about the topic. It just brings in the hectic emotion into everything. It doesn't give a sense of safety and stability. And in general, it's not the way we want to start our workshop. So we want to stay also transparent and say, hey, give me just a minute or 2 to resolve this, or maybe you can help me out with this, and so on. And just this projecting that you have control over this issue. Number 2, for all the situations that can occur often, please always have a backup plan. Like even if I use slides and I rely on them, I will always know my presentation without slides, if it's a presentation or the part of a workshop that are more slide-based. I will always know how to deliver them without slides as well, and maybe even have some ideas and options how to use flip charts shouldn't slides work. It never happened to me in these 18 years that slides didn't work and that we really could not use them. but I still always have in mind, what will I do if they don't? I have enough of my notes that I can go through everything without slides as well. And I really want to be ready for that. Similar for online. If I have something that's online and I have internet connection I'm using, I will always have at least one backup option, maybe mobile data or something else, but at least one backup option if this one doesn't work. Of course, you can have backup for everything. Something really dramatic can happen that, the whole network falls down in your region, including the mobile and whatnot. But to a level to which I want to have several backups. Another thing that can really help is to bring in a bit of humor into this, because the thing you don't want to do is tense up, because then participants tense up as well. So we want to maybe also bring in a bit of humor or a bit of making the situation almost a bit of fun and diffuse the tension. And one more great thing you can do, depending on what the technical problem is, if suitable and if it makes sense in the context of your workshop, you can give a participant a little side task. That could be discussing something in pairs or breakouts. That could be working on a solo reflection for a couple of minutes, giving them a couple of meaningful questions that will actually be useful later in the workshop, and giving them something meaningful to do that we will be able to fit into the workshop while you're resolving the problem. Again, if that's possible. Now, the second situation that is very commonly mentioned is the one when you have a participant that is a little bit too talkative. And there can be different versions of this. They can be that they're very experienced, so they just want to share a lot, or that they're just very motivated or eager, or in general talkative as a personality. Or it can play out more that they're a more dominant personality, or that they have a dominant role in the team that is in the training. So it's a lot of different flavors and shades that can happen there within what makes them talkative. But in some way, it's a participant who's bringing in a little bit too much of himself into the conversation, which is nice, much like something also to appreciate, that they're motivated and they're bringing in things. But at the same time, it can be disruptive for the rest of the group and disruptive for the process that we're trying to build. We can do a lot of things here, but here are just some ideas. It will really depend on the situation as well. One thing we can do is acknowledge their contribution. Oh, that was really great idea. And then redirect it. And now we want to move to this next topic type of a thing. So in some way, we always want to be mindful not to kind of, push them back and disconnect them because we are not allowing them to express something. But at the same time, we want to be, after that acknowledgement, very clearly redirecting. We also might want to use this participant when we want to open the interaction, when we have a bit more challenging question, when we need someone to facilitate maybe the small group, or maybe when we need an example or an anecdote from someone and we know that they're ready and open to go, we can also use them to warm up the space. We do want to be mindful that the rest of the group is not annoyed by them speaking so much, but in the parts that are maybe a bit more challenging for people to speak up, we can actually use them to start off that interaction a little bit more. In that case, I would highly recommend limiting their sharing. So asking, hey, would you like to share, but just briefly in a minute or so? Giving them a clear frame, how much time they have, that they don't talk over. One more thing, not mentioned on the slide, but one more thing that I like to use is also my body language to kind of speed them up a bit and to communicate that they're, disconnecting a bit from them in body language, nodding a bit faster to hurry them up and so on. But that's more on general facilitation side, using our body language mindfully, than towards this specific participant. One more thing that will help a lot will be to use different structures and methods that in general allow for fair sharing time, such as different methods from liberating structures, such as a round robin where everybody shares something but then briefly, such as pair work or time limits in different way. So there are many, many things we can think of here that are still very meaningful in our facilitation, but that are very structured way of guiding people through the conversation, that they don't have that much space to diverge too much. And then the last thing, setting very clear expectations when inviting people to share in terms of how long or how abundantly should they share. So framing those expectations very clearly, such as saying, let's just briefly hear thoughts from the ones who want to share. or let's hear from few people, but please in just one word or sentence, or let's hear from everyone, but please in just one keyword or sentence, so we kind of bring in many ideas in the space fairly quickly. Or maybe we have around 10 minutes for this sharing. Who would like to start in the first minute or two? So in some way, it could be many different ways of how we phrase this, but in some way we are basically setting a clear expectation how abundant should the sharing be. And then communicating it in our body language, and sometimes slightly more explicitly as well, if that boundary has been passed over. So these were two situations that are very common, technical problems and then also overly engaged participants. And now we still have two situations that are very interesting and very common, which are more on the disengaged side. So first of all, this one I'm sure everybody encountered at some moment. It is the group that feels a bit disengaged. In some way, they're not really participating enough, they're kind of quiet, they're not really interacting, and you have no idea what is happening. So here are 5 tips what you can do in this situation. Number 1, you can try to diagnose a bit what is actually happening in the room. And here you might not have the right answer, but sometimes you might have more ideas. But you still want to question it in each case. What is actually happening in this room? Is it that they're low on energy? Is it that maybe they don't perceive this exercise or this whole workshop as so relevant? So is it a matter of their motivation, that they're not really motivated because this doesn't feel so useful for them? This can especially happen if you don't communicate the goal of the workshop and the goals for different activities clearly enough. And then is it maybe the method that's not working out for them so much? Maybe they're all more extroverted and you make them reflect a lot, or the opposite. You ask them to share before you gave them space to reflect. Is there something in the method that maybe disconnected them a bit? If you can find what it is or have a suspicion, work with that directly. For example, if it's about energy, maybe you really want to create the next activity that will boost a bit of energy, that maybe includes more movement, or it's a bit faster pace, so in some way to shift them and move them a little bit. In each case, one thing that will always be useful to do in this situation, unless the relevance is the problem, but in all other circumstances, it will help if you shift the method a little bit. If you can, depending on how your design is and how your process is, but if you shift the method to maybe to move the energy a little bit, to create a bit of variety, and also to accommodate their learning style or learning preference in that moment, or personality style or preference in that moment a little bit better. And that can mean maybe to fall back to breakouts a bit sooner than you expected, or you didn't expect at all, to create a more active exercise, to maybe give them a pair discussion that they do in walking. So different ways of just basically what you want to create there: variety, movement, shift in energy, engaging with others in a different way, maybe in a smaller group. That's always useful when they get a bit disengaged, in pairs or in a small group. Shifting methods should help in most of the situations when it's more about energy, or they got a bit bored, or anything like that. Maybe it's after lunch slump or whatnot. Another thing you want to recognize is that sometimes it can look like disengagement, while in reality is their need for more reflection or processing. Way too often we create workshops that are a bit too fast-paced for how brain actually works and process, and very often we create workshops that are too extroverted if you look on the average workshop, where we demand sharing or discussion maybe sooner than somebody managed to actually process and reflect on their thoughts. So this is something you always want to be very mindful of. One of my best tips for this is to always give people a minute to think before sharing things, or before jumping into small groups or pairs or sharing in a big group, to give them that minute to reflect and maybe write on their own answers before they engage in a discussion. So you really want to be mindful of this more introvert process and more reflective process in the room that is very often disrupted by too quick dynamics and sharings of an average workshop. So with that in mind, we want to keep in mind maybe they just need time for reflection in general, because maybe we were too fast-paced and too active, or maybe there are just some individuals that need a bit more of that. So you always want to think, if it looks like disengagement, did I actually allow enough time for reflection? And if not, should I add on a bit of that? But here you really want to be careful, because if they're bored and unmotivated because they don't see relevance in the workshop, or you always kept using the same methods, then giving them more time for reflection will not be very helpful. So you really need to make careful choices here. Because of this, as you saw in these first 2 tips to shift methods and to allow more time for reflection, I was relying a lot on you guessing what should be done and what they need. But in reality, it is so much better if you can design a bit more unique solution for the situation that's a bit more custom for that group, and that it's not you guessing, but actually you interact with the group and see what they need. And there are 2 ways you can do that are in general really good things to do in any workshop all the time, but especially if the group gets a bit disengaged. One of them is to keep offering more choice in things you do. Choice, for example, ask the group to vote. Do they want to continue with certain discussion or move on to the next topic? Ask them to choose between 2 options for exercise. Offer them to choose their role in a certain exercise. Are they observer? Are they active? Are they presenter? Are they listener? Like, what is their role? So offer them as much as possible choice, both individually within the activities and the way they engage with activities, and as a group. Where do they want to go? Do they want to have faster pace, slower pace? Do they want to diverge more into some subtopic? What is most relevant for them here? And quite connected thing, keep asking them for feedback a lot. This is one of the best practices you can do, to ask them for visible feedback, like thumbs up or down or some other sign with hand that they show, maybe energy, where they show between 1 and 10 fingers for their energy level, or ask them to give you a number in chat, what is their energy level. But basically, whenever in doubt and you're not sure, are they bored? Do they need more time to reflect? Which are 2 opposite things, right? Should you move faster or slow down? They need something to boost their energy and so on. The best thing you can do is to actually ask them for the answer. But I would not necessarily make that question very open, because if the group is disengaged, it's not likely that they will answer it if it's very open question, and if they're a bit low on energy and so on. Because of that, it's much more effective if in the answer you offer them more of a yes, no, or some sort of option 1 or option 2, and then ask them to express their preferences within those options. Because that way you can also insist on it a little bit more, on the answers. Like if you give them an open question and you say, oh, I feel everybody has been a little bit quiet, what is going on? They might be very shy to share. But if you say, hey, it's been a little bit quiet, I wonder what's going on. How are you with energy? Let's vote 1 to 10 in chat. What's your energy level? Okay, I see energy level is low. I think of a break, or I see with them what they need. I see energy level is high. Then I ask, oh, okay, so then I'm not sure what is it that, that keeps you a bit quiet. Do you need, number 1, more time to reflect? Number 2, would you prefer us to move to another topic and shorten this topic a bit? Or number 3, I don't know, some third option, what we could do. Please vote in chat. And then when I ask them to vote in such a simple and direct way, then I can also impose it a bit. And I can say, please, everybody vote. Even if you're happy with all the options, write all of the options. But I would really like to get feedback from you here to make sure we move in direction that's more relevant for you. It's important for me to have your feedback here. Please make sure everybody votes. And with this voting, I will really push them a bit. I'll stay with a bit of gentle stubbornness, waiting for their votes, reminding them, asking them, nudging them to definitely vote, saying, oh, we have 3 votes and we have 10 people, so I'll still wait a bit to hear others. And if people are demotivated and disengaged, this might be a bit annoying for them, but still, you will create a way through this to pull them back into the conversation. They will not be, because what's the problem with boredom? They're passive listeners. They got in passive role. They're your victim. You created a workshop and they're bored and they're in passive role. They're sitting there listening, disengaged, and they're not part of creating that experience. And you can't fix that for them. You can't just make it more fun and then they'll be motivated, You need to bring them into the conversation so they would help you fix it together with them. Because of that, you might want to push them a bit, even if they don't like that. In this, hey, give me your feedback. Where should we go? What should we do? What is missing here? Make it as simple and straightforward as possible with votes and numbers instead of very explanatory, but make them active part of that conversation again. Help them guide that conversation with you. That's the way to bring the disengaged group back in and shape the next parts of the workshop according to their needs. Okay, the last scenario, this one is definitely getting a little bit long. I hope you're still with me. Remember, you can always grab the handout and reflect a bit more on these situations. But the last one is when we have one or two individuals who are disengaged, or a couple of them. So it's not the whole group that's disengaged, but we have a few people that are just very quiet. So first thing we want to recognize there is that it really might be down to that individual style, that they need quieter way of processing, that they don't really like to interact so loud, that they're maybe a bit more on introvert side or just really reflective, and they need more time and space to reflect. And I want to keep that in mind and really respect their style. I had some groups where I would have participants who were very quiet throughout the workshop, and I was even a bit concerned, and I was like, should I push them a bit more? And I would push them only maybe in check-in and check-out where everybody needs to share something. And I would push them if I would be asking for this direct feedback. Do you want to do this or that? Then I would expect their answer. But I wouldn't push them to share in between. And finally, there were more than a few situations like this when people then came up to me after the workshop and said that they really loved it, that it was really insightful for them, that it was really helpful. So I learned to understand that sometimes wanting to have people engage more actively is more a matter of my comfort than what works well for them. So they can be a bit more settled. Sometimes depends also on what are we working on and what's the topic and the goal. But sometimes keeping a bit quiet will be much more helpful for them to actually process. The second thing that we can do is we can observe these individuals a bit more closely and try to notice their body language and facial expressions. Do they seem really, disengaged? Or do they seem like they're thinking or reflecting? And body language can be deceiving. Like people crossing their arms does not mean at all that they're disengaged. It just means that's more comfortable for them. Or somebody, when they're reflective, they have same facial expression like when they're bored. So sometimes it's hard to notice, but that can be helpful also to notice a bit what is happening for them and to get some, non-verbal feedback from them. Another thing that can be very helpful is to keep using that whole group voting more and pay attention to their input. Do you need more time or do you prefer to move along? Do you prefer us to stay with this topic or do you prefer us that we start that topic now? And so on. And so giving more of these choices and options and then seeing also what do they vote for and how fast do they vote will give you indication, are they actually really disengaged or they just have a bit more quiet processing style. Another thing you can do if you're seriously concerned, ask them in breaks, how are they, what do they need? Don't ask them, why have you been so quiet? But ask them what is working well in the workshop for them so far and what would they still like you to adjust, like a bit of feedback. Or ask them, how are they doing? Just engage with them a bit more personally, see what do they say. And then finally, occasionally you can use the method where everybody has to share. So everybody has to throw in their thoughts about something. So we do kind of round robin and the whole group needs to share something. I would definitely use this occasionally to really get the whole group present in the space, but I would really use that sparingly. Very often I'll use it in check-in and check-out and maybe just once or twice throughout the workshop. I think it's mostly not beneficial to be pushing people to share, but we do want to think when is the right moment to actually push a little bit and hear everybody's feedback. I hope this gave you some ideas. I know it was a lot of tips. I do want to invite you one more time. Do download that handout. It will really help you follow through with these tips. Take some time to really reflect and talk to other trainers. What are the challenging situations for you and how can you get better with them? I again want to invite you to Trainers Conversation as an amazing space to actually share that. And if you want to learn about this in more structured, more experiential way, you're very welcome to join me on Train the Trainer or Facilitation Bootcamp courses. It would be great to see you there. Now, there is one more situation that people love to ask about in these conversations. I didn't cover it today. I'm considering to cover it in one of the next podcast episodes. So let me know if that would be interesting for you. And that's the situation when you have hostages in your training, which is basically people who never wanted to be there. Sent by their managers, sent by their organization, not really keen on the workshop. What do you do then? If you're curious about answer to this, let me know in the comments or through LinkedIn. That's linked in the description of this podcast episode. So through LinkedIn message or by replying to any of Trainers Toolbox weekly newsletters. Let me know if you would like to see an episode on hostages, and I'll be sure to record it. Again, final message for today. I think this is our longest podcast episode so far. Now thinking I should have split it in two, but I hope you will still, I'm happy that some of you still managed to come through it with me. The last message is that after the workshop, when you have an encounter difficult situation, even if it doesn't go well, do make sure to take a moment to reflect. What can I learn out of this situation? And to really think, what are my learnings for the future? I know when we encounter uncomfortable situation, we don't really want to go back to it. It's not really comfortable, it's not really nice, but it is one of the most valuable things we can do to also reflect on our learnings from real life situations, and then in this calm space when we are with ourselves to think, what can I do better next time? And again, maybe discuss with peer trainers some other ideas how to approach such situation in the future. Thank you for joining me today, staying through this longest podcast episode ever. Looking forward to seeing some of virtual spaces. Please do connect. The easiest way to do that is on LinkedIn if you're not connected yet. I would love to engage also in other meaningful conversations about trainings and how to make learning work. Bye. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.